Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode in the series of COVID-19 focused episodes. I hope that you all are safe and healthy right now, and that this episode series has been a good resource for you. I'm super excited to present this conversation today because today's guest was one of my favorite Founder Friday guests, and we've had quite a few. But she really brought a lot of great vulnerability and perspective and a real down-to-earth way of talking about business. And Lauren Crabbe is the guest we have today. She is the co-founder of Andytown Coffee Roasters in San Francisco. And their company is doing some amazing stuff over there. Even though their operations have been significantly downsized like the rest of specialty coffee, they have taken this hard time and turned it into an amazing opportunity to serve people in their community, specifically the healthcare heroes in their community. Lauren is at the helm of what I think is the first specialty coffee program to purchase coffee for healthcare heroes online. And you've seen many, many other coffee shops following suit. They had such enormous success with this program, have even been able to hire people back as a result of having this program in their cafe. We talk about this program in this conversation, but also about how things are running now at Andytown as they've had to switch up their schedules, as they work to protect their team, what Lauren is doing to stay motivated as an owner and how she's leading in the midst of all of this. So you're going to learn about running operations in a crisis and how to basically lead when you're not in control as a leader, It's a very challenging and taxing thing, but Lauren is doing an amazing job and setting an example for the coffee community globally while doing it. So I hope that you find this interview insightful and super helpful. I sure did. So here now is my conversation with the co-founder of Andytown Coffee Roasters, Lauren Crabbe. Well, hi, Lauren. Welcome back to the show. I've been seeing the example that you all have been setting with your projects and the way you're conducting business in the midst of this crisis. I think it's really inspirational, and I'm looking forward to kind of digging in a little bit and getting some of what's going on over at Andytown.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back. It's been a pretty crazy couple weeks.
It's to say the least. There's no accurate terminology to, somewhere about a year or two from now, someone will come up with a perfect way to describe it, but we're fishing for it right now.
Yes.
So when this all started happening, obviously a lot of this kind of came to light first on the West Coast. And so you all were kind of dealing with it before a lot of us. It was business as usual until when? What was the first sign that you thought, well, here's something coming down the pike that might really disrupt business?
Yeah, we have 5 locations, 4 are public-facing cafes around the city, and 1 is a private cafe in an office. And the first week of March, that office went to voluntary work from home, and they closed all of the amenities. So we, being an amenity, got shut down. And we were like, that seems a little crazy. Like, why are they shutting down the office? Like, we didn't really understand the severity of what was going to happen. And they were like, oh, we're just going to shut it down for a couple weeks, no big deal. And then, a week and a half later, the mayor did the mandatory shelter in place in the city. And that happened on the 16th. And we had just no idea how catastrophic this would be for us, for our business, for our communities. It's completely like unprecedented in modern times. And when the mayor shut it down, I just remember I called an emergency manager meeting. I have 12 people who report directly to me, and we were all in the same room, and I looked at my books and I was just like, I don't know how we're going to make payroll next week.
Wow.
It was devastating. And we also had the sort of the pressure from the city. The mayor in her address specifically said that to-go coffee and to-go food would still be allowed. So we had the blessing from the mayor to be open under our extreme restrictions. But I was talking to my managers and we're like, we don't feel safe, basically forcing our hourly employees to come to work if it's not a healthy thing to do. Like, we had that sort of pressure where we didn't want our hourly employees to be exposed to anything. And then at the same time, we're looking at our books and we're like, we don't have enough money in our bank account right now. If we stop everything today, we don't have enough money to pay payroll and to pay everyone's sick leave balance, or the PTO. We always, we treat PTO and sick leave kind of the same, that the baristas can take it whenever they want. And so we just had this horrifying reality, and the managers, came together with the solution, which was we kept the shops open, and we sort of did our math, and we're like, okay, we need to make 30 grand in the next week in order to make payroll, which under normal circumstances would not be hard, right? Because we have 4 locations, it's not, or it's not a crazy goal. And so we kept 2 of the locations opened, but we didn't allow any hourly employees to work because we didn't want to expose them to anything. So it was all of the salaried employees worked like 60 hours and just pumped out as much coffee as they could. And we managed to get through and make our payroll the following week. And it was great.
That is great.
Very inspiring.
That's so interesting in that, you mentioned like, 30,000 in a week might not be a big deal, but with the business severed in such a way, like cutting off, it's like in a past episode I said, it's like if the city started to do work on your sidewalk without you knowing and blocked all entrances.
Yeah.
That sucks for like a week or something, but this is way longer, and you don't know when they're going to be done.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the decision to have salaried employees go to operate the cafes versus hourly, and how that decision was arrived at. I mean, I feel like I get it a little bit, but take me inside, like why that decision was made.
So we, our salaried employees are the managers, basically. So the people who were working, most of my managers started as baristas. So my HR coordinator started as a barista, my graphic designer, my accountant, even every single person in management, with the exception of our wholesale manager, started at Andytown as a barista. So when we all came together and looked at our numbers and like looked at the recommendations from the CDC and looked at everything else, we were like the managers felt so much like they had to not only protect their hourly employees by not forcing them to be exposed to the public, but also make sure that they can get paid. Because if you're looking at your numbers and you don't have enough money to pay your employees for the hours that they've already worked, we're not even talking about like PTO or hazard pay or anything. Like, we're talking about hours that have already been worked that we don't have enough money in the bank account to pay.
Right.
And so that's when the managers like we have a very open book policy with our managers and our finances. So they're looking at at everything. And that's when they collectively made the call of like, we can't have our people working in the public, but we're going to do it. We're going to implement all these safety procedures so that we feel safe. And we're going to pull through and get enough money in the bank account to pay everyone next week. And so we had like our accountant working a bar shift, and we had our graphic designer working a bar shift, and our like HR coordinator, our director of QC, who most of her time is spent in the cupping lab or traveling to buy our coffee. She was working bar shifts. Every person working bar shifts was a manager, and it was just really cool to see everyone kind of pull together and make that call to protect their team and to work a lot. They worked a lot that week.
Wow, that is absolutely awesome. So, and from that point, how did things progress from there? I know you had some pretty significant milestones happen in the midst of this. There's the St. Patrick's Day parade that got canceled, and you also had your 6-year anniversary.
Yeah, we had our 6-year anniversary. We had a whole party planned. We were gonna do a little block party and we do a coffee giveaway thing every year, and it was like all canceled. Everything was canceled. It sucks, but it's like, you know, when you think of things in like the scheme of things and all of the horrible stuff that's happening in the world, it's hard to mourn like a birthday party for a business. You know, it's like, it's just kind of like, oh, well, like, you know, I'm more worried about like, you know, my employees who are, you know, not able to pay their bills. Like, that's what's keeping me up at night. It's like, yeah, the birthday party got canceled, whatever. Like, you know, how do we rally and get people taken care of? Because that's what stresses me out the most.
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, in all of this, it's weighing on you in particular, that you're the owner, you know, and you have this kind of, it stops with you, like the decisions to ultimately stay open, to, you know, make sure everyone's okay when you're not fully in control of whether or not they are okay. How have you been sort of motivating yourself in the midst of these things that you're just kind of not in control of?
It's been really, I don't know. I think when you're the owner of a small business like this, like, there's already so much that's kind of out of your control. Like you mentioned, like, you know, the city fixing the sidewalk. You know, sometimes it rains. I have beach cafes. My cafes are all on the beach. When it rains, we don't see customers. You know, it's like there's certain things that are out of my control, but like you said, they're all kind of like temporary, and they're all things that you can kind of anticipate. And when you're dealing with something on this level that is so unprecedented, you can't think, it's impossible to think a few steps ahead. Like, you know, even putting this on my calendar like 2 days ahead of time, I'm like, whoa, 2 days ahead of time. I'm scheduling something 2 days out. Like, watch out, world. Like, I've got my shit together now. Excuse me. It's crazy. And I think, you know, small businesses are just, we're so hand to mouth by nature. And so I think we are poised to handle things a little bit better, just because we're so used to things getting thrown at us. But this is kind of at a level that's so big, you can't even, like you said, we don't even have a word for it yet.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, it goes without saying, and I think it's become sort of the mantra that there are things outside of our control, and what I see though, in your cafe and your projects and what you're doing to pivot in the midst of this is an example of this. Agility that you're talking about with small business is, you know, instead of dwelling on the things that we can't control, we're doing things that we can control. And you're taking the materials that you have, the people that you have, and extending the same kind of generosity as you would to someone who comes into the cafe. So I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about, first, like, how the cafes are operating that are still open in their modified form. And then, you know, I would love to talk a bit about your community service as well.
Yeah. So the biggest pivot we've made is, so we've adjusted our in like how we do our retail. So the majority of my business is our in-store sales. And so losing that revenue stream is very paralyzing. So keeping a couple of the cafes open, one thing that we did is we adjusted our hours. So we're only open from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that allows us to have just like one team that opens and closes the cafe. It's a long day, but it gives us the ability to run the cafe on a bare bones crew. Normally we're open 7 to 5 and we have an opening and a closing crew. So that schedule, the shortening the hours allowed us to run on a smaller schedule. And then we eliminated all of our seating. We, on the weekends, which are still high foot traffic, even though we shouldn't have high foot traffic, on the weekends, which are still kind of busy, we have like basically a host that stands at the door, and we don't even really allow people inside. And they like have the square reader outside, and we just kind of like print all of the tickets inside and do the kind of touchless handoff. It's been pretty good. Everyone's been very, very good about the social distancing. We haven't run into any problems really of people not really understanding it. Everyone's been like super cool. I think all the customer feedback I've gotten has just been people being so thankful that we're open so they can come and get coffee beans or a cup of coffee or whatever, but also just really happy that we're open because it preserves a little sense of normalcy. I think people really are craving that sort of sense that everything's okay. You know, we just have to adjust our behaviors, but everything's going to be okay. And when you go in San Francisco, a lot of the main streets, like Haight Street right now, all of the retail stores, the non-essential retail stores, so all the clothing stores, everything, they're all boarded up.
Wow.
Everything's boarded up. My friends who didn't board up their retail store actually got a broken window the other day.
Wow.
It's pretty gnarly. So when you have a business that's remaining open, even if it's like, you know, everyone's standing 6 feet apart and you can't, you know, shake anyone's hand or whatever, it's like, it still is nice to have that little sense of normalcy. And I think that's what customers are really craving right now.
Absolutely. I mean, you're sort of that deeply ingrained habit that they've developed, and your brand has been there for them for so long. And you know, I wonder about your staff, the ones who are the salaried employees who are working now, and outside of their normal wheelhouse, but maybe, you know, they were all baristas, so now they're rediscovering those muscles again and fighting off the the hidden tendinitis that they thought they got rid of.
Yeah.
What kind of normalcy, what kind of things are you doing to stay in communication with them and establish some sense of rhythm and normalcy for the staff currently?
It's been really hard. So one of the other challenges that I face that I think a lot of people are facing right now is I have 2 kids and they are not going to preschool and they're not going to daycare. And my mom, who's 60, can't just come and take care of them like she usually does. So I have been faced with that extra challenge of being a mom in all of this. And so I think like, if I had the time, it would be nice to be able to like have, you know, daily check-ins even. I can't even do that. So it's like I'm on Slack while I'm breastfeeding and I'm, you know, trying to do a phone call while my kid's screaming at me about putting his puzzle together. You know, like there's a lot of difficulties that I think that we face on top of it. So it's like, it's been like to answer your question, like, no, there's no normal. There's no, like, I was just talking today with a couple of my employees. It's like this problem, this shelter in place, like, you know, the PPP application that I'm applying for, it estimates that we'll be up and running back to normal, like normal job capacity on June 30th. June 30th is a long way away.
That is.
So like that's the reality that we're facing right now. So it's like I'm encouraging my managers, because I think when you're in crisis mode, you're not building systems, right? So like a lot of what we do as managers is we're building systems so our employees can succeed. And when you're working at yourself and when you're in emergency mode, there's the tendency to not build systems, because you're like, I'm just going to come in tomorrow and do it. I don't need to have a closing checklist. It's just me closing and me opening, like that's kind of the tendency that people have when they're working by themselves. And as business owners, we very much identify with that. And I think what I've been telling my managers is like, don't treat this as like a day. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Like we need to create systems that maybe we're only going to use them for the next month, but we need to have that sort of like structure so that we can work within it and succeed. Because if we're just running every day, like, oh, it'll be back to normal tomorrow, like we're going to fail. We're going to get burnt out. We're going to be miserable. And you just have to keep that stamina going and just know that like, no, it's not going to be normal tomorrow. If we're lucky, it'll be normal in 3 months. I don't think we're going to be that lucky. So we need to like accept like this is our new normal, and we need to like, address these little problems and take care of them now, instead of just thinking like, oh, it'll be back to normal tomorrow. It's like, nope, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And with the others understanding, like you were saying in your situation, and others also that have personal lives that are upended as well. Mm-hmm. Like the normal job descriptions no longer apply. And
no, exactly.
So it's like crowdsourced solutions from the remaining staff.
Yeah, exactly. And like, we've been lucky enough that we've been actually able to rehire some of the people that, and I can talk about that in a little bit when I talk about the Healthcare Heroes program, but it's like, it's been really great. But then it's like, you go from being in a total survival mode for like a week where you're like, we just need to make payroll. We just need to make payroll. And then you kind of lift your head up and you're like, oh, okay, I'm still running a business, but everything's different now. And it's this sort of dreamlike thing where you're like, you're seeing your same customers, but their faces are covered. And you're like kind of operating in this. It's just it's this weird reality.
It's very bizarre. Yeah. We get to see a whole range of people. I still work a couple of bar shifts myself here in Louisville, and you see a whole range of reactions, people that are just to the hilt protected, and other people who just don't care. And it makes it hard to like know what to expect. It's so eerie.
It is very eerie. And here in San Francisco, like it's real. Like, my, I had to bring my daughter in for her 1-year appointment the other day. And my pediatrician, she was saying like, in San Francisco, if you had a really bad cold in February, you probably had COVID. She's like, it was getting community transported, like community spread in San Francisco as early as February and January.
Wow.
And, she's like, they're kind of, obviously we're still in the thick of it. But the people that I'm talking to, like, are saying like, yeah, basically everyone in America has to get this disease or we have to come up with a vaccine. There's like no in between.
Wow. No kidding.
Not that I'm a medical expert. I'm just talking to a lot of them, but that's my takeaway. And I'm just like, all right, I guess I'm just going to keep making coffee.
Yeah. I mean, what can you do?
There's nothing. I mean, like, that's where I feel so helpless. And I think like that's where so many food people that I talk to feel so helpless, where it's like, what am I going to do? I make, fancy cocktails for a living. I make coffee for a living. Mm-hmm. You feel very, very helpless when you're faced with this sort of global threat. And that's where like the Coffee for Healthcare Heroes came about.
Yeah, I was going to say that you're talking to a lot of medical professionals, and especially now with this, it's come along and been a really a boon for your business in the midst of this really down time.
Yeah. So it's like, the Coffee for Healthcare Heroes came about because I saw on Twitter, I think it's called Feed the Line. I saw on Twitter a bunch of chefs talking back and forth about, wouldn't it be cool if we could, because one of the things when you close every restaurant in San Francisco with a day's notice, you got a lot of perishable goods. And
Yes.
like I'm like emptying our walk-in, and we're like making whatever we can with it. We're sending our employees home with food. We're like, and one of the things that the restaurant started doing was like, you know, basically selling their meals to donors, and then delivering the meals to to hospitals. So I kind of took that idea and shrunk it down for coffee and pastries, because that's what I do. And so what I created a little quick page on my Squarespace website, which took me like maybe a half hour to put together. And I created the items, which was coffee and pastry to start. And you could buy as little as 1 cup of coffee for $3, or you could buy a whole big carafe for $55. I think that's what my pricing is. And then we would deliver it. And one of we had a few different contacts just through friends and neighbors at hospitals. So that was like pretty easy the first couple days. So I opened up the website and I posted on Instagram, just like, hey, like this is a thing that we're doing. And within overnight, I think I made it live at like 6 p.m. And by the time I woke up in the morning, we had, I think it was $5,000.
Unbelievable.
Of people just buying coffee for healthcare professionals. And then the following day, we got $20,000 of people buying coffee.
Wow.
It was mind blowing. I'm just like, it's absolutely incredible. And to date, I think we're at over $80,000 of people buying coffee for healthcare professionals.
No kidding.
And it's amazing. So the next day I called my one of my events coordinator, who had been working as a barista because all of her events dried up. And so she was one of the people who got her hours cut. So I called them up and I was like, hey, like, can you come in? And like, they just like that, I rehired Hazel. And then we slowly started to be able to give hours back. And we've since been able to rehire the equivalent of 5 full-time people, doing not only the coffee deliveries, but just kind of like, you know, re-adding barista shifts, and kind of just getting back into this semblance of normal. But yeah, it's been the Coffee for Healthcare Heroes program has been a huge gift from our customers, because they are buying this coffee, and you know, they're buying this coffee, we're making it, but instead of giving it to them, we're just delivering it somewhere else. And it's been really, really cool.
That is really awesome. And I've seen it pop up all across the country and likely other places around the world where,
so.
you know, it's all over. And you just did a webinar with Square about this too.
Yeah, I did. And I really hope that other people take this on. And I've been getting some emails from other business owners all over the country who want to do this. And there's a lot of like hesitation, I think, of people being like, oh, well, how do I know how to do the delivery? And how do I know how to, and I'm just like, if you put it out there that you want to do this, like your customers will make it happen for you. Like, sure. That's my experience, at least, is like we put it out there, and we've been like, just through word of mouth, we've been able to schedule at least 2 deliveries a day. And we're scheduling out into May at this point of just, going out and delivering a lot of coffee and a lot of pastries. We're making our way sort of through that money that was donated every day. We every day we go through and we kind of look at what we delivered, and I'm like, okay, this is the value. And then I kind of go through the orders that came in, and I check off the money that was used for that delivery. And then I email those people and I say like, hey, like your funds were used for a delivery, and it went to the ICU at, you know, San Francisco General Hospital. Oh, and here's great. A photo of the doctors drinking the coffee that you bought them. Like, thank you so much. And that's been so rewarding for me, because I send out those emails every day at the end of the day. And then I get emails back from the people being like, this made my day. Like, this is so great. And then they share it on their social media, and then we get more people buying coffee. So it's just this great cycle, and we're several weeks behind at this point as far as like, our capabilities and what we can deliver versus what's coming in on the website. Which is like kind of frustrating because I'm like trying to fill these orders as quickly as I can, but it's like we're a small business, so I'm just trying to fill as many as we can. So yeah, but it's been pretty great because now it's like we're scheduling out into April and I have enough money to go. Right now I have enough money to deliver every day to 200 healthcare professionals all the way through to the first week of May. So I'm just going to keep doing this. I'll keep the website open. And then, it's like, if we get to May and I'm like, oh, maybe we need to, raise some more money, I can send out another email and hopefully get more people. But it's been really great.
That is really awesome. You're building a new business, essentially.
Yeah,
it's like,
it is. And like, so our business before was 1% online, and last month in March, our business was 35% online.
Wow.
Which is like going from 1% to 35% is insane. And like our cupping room has been turned into our fulfillment center. So like my beautiful pristine cupping lab is covered in boxes and like I'm just like, it's fine, whatever you need. Like we're not cupping coffee. Well, we are cupping coffee, but we have a modified cupping protocols so that we don't do any cross contamination. But yeah, it's been a trip.
Yeah, I mean, questions I have about that are like when people talk about hesitation that they have of doing it because they don't know the logistics of it. And I hear you saying like your customers will make it happen for you. And I guess if you're dedicated to it, you'll make it happen for you too. Like you'll figure out a way to like clear out your trunk and pull into the hospital, make a phone call. Even if you're not San Francisco, that's the thing too, is like not everybody has as much of a crisis. I would say everyone has like the crisis. Everyone's locked down pretty much. Some hospitals are busier than others, but it sounds like something that everybody could benefit from, even if it's just a little.
Exactly. And the feedback we've gotten from the medical professionals is like, so a lot of them, the hospital cafeterias are closed or they have modified hours where they're like basically they're just doing essential food. So just for patients, right? So at least this is in a couple of the hospitals we've talked to. And so the doctors who normally would like walk and get a sandwich at the local deli, well, that deli's closed and they can't order on Grubhub or whatever because there's like a wait on all the delivery apps. So they're just like starving and there's only so many like cup of noodles you can eat and still be a, functioning medical professional. So they've been all so thankful to us and to the other restaurants who are doing this, like Feed the Line. And so I really encourage, businesses, because I think we kind of struggle with especially as coffee people, like we're like, well, like, are we an essential item? We're like, I guess you can live without coffee. But like the doctors who are out there saving the world, they do not need to live without coffee right now. They need the coffee. Like we need to just like accept like we are providing this essential service and we're providing it to the frontline workers who are doing the work to keep our community safe. And that's what I keep reminding myself when I'm like hesitating, like, oh, like, should I really like, be out there? And I'm like, no, like they need it. They want it, they need it. And if it means that I get to keep employing, right now I still have, I have 30 people that are working full time right now. And I'm like, if I can keep employing 30 people so they can keep feeding their families, then I'm doing an amount of good for my community and for my people. And that's what I have to keep reminding myself, as I'm kind of going a little crazy because it's very overwhelming.
Oh yeah. Quite an understatement there. Wonder if you have any, like if somebody says, I want to do this, this has convinced me, I was on the fence, I want to do it. From your own experience, what would you say is the most important thing to remember when executing this well?
I think having as much communication with your customers as possible. So one of the problems that we had early on was we were pretty vague on like, because we didn't really know how to do it. We were pretty vague on like, okay, we're collecting this money and it's going to go to this service. And we weren't really sure what to do after that. And I think right now it's like a lot of my day is spent like communicating directly with customers, either customers that are, nurses and doctors who are like, hey, I want coffee in my unit, and making sure that they get it. Or if they're like customers who bought coffee and they're like, hey, like I bought coffee like a day or two ago and I'm wondering which hospital it went to. And I'm like, hey, I'm a little backlogged, but I promise you, your coffee is going to go to a hospital. It just might happen in the next couple weeks. And every time I communicate it, they're like, oh yeah, that's great. Just making sure. And it's like, so just making sure that you're available to have that one-on-one conversations with your customers time and time again. Because that's the thing with online that I never really anticipated is the sort of additional customer support that's needed. Just with everyone being like, oops, I sent it to the wrong address, or like, oops, or it arrived and it got stolen. And I like dealing with all like, all this stuff that goes on with being an online business, which is so different than the regular retail stores. So I think just kind of like, if you're pivoting, just make time for yourself and give yourself the sort of ability to make mistakes, and your customers will be very understanding. I haven't had anyone who has been mean. There's no mean right now.
Not, especially not now.
Yeah.
There's a moratorium on meanness, even from the mean people.
Exactly.
Do you feel that your increase in online is purely temporary, or let's say in 3 months we get the all clear for some miracle that we're back to opening up the stores and everything else? Like, how do you see what you're doing now transitioning into having where all the cafes are open? And is it something you would keep doing? Is it something that is just going to continue, but in sort of a abbreviated capacity?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we in San Francisco, and the tech office culture is very much like, you go to work and everything's provided for you and you don't have to go anywhere. And so much of the food industry in San Francisco is kind of revolved around that, right? So it's like, you have your Andytown coffee in your office, and you have all of everything you need in your office. And now that everyone's working from home, they're kind of like reaching out for that same sort of stuff, but they're going directly to the businesses instead of, just getting it for free at work. And so that's been kind of an interesting transition, is like watching people's sort of consumption habits change. I think when it comes to looking at it, it's like, I'm not sure if companies will ever go back to that sort of office lifestyle that we had. I think that there will be some companies who just choose to work from home forever. I think that there will be, people who don't have to go back to work because their office is not an office. I think
Right.
that's going to be something that will happen. I think that we're going to see a lot of these, tech employees moving to places like Louisville, where they can work for Facebook and get a house and, watch out.
Oh my God. The next big wave of tech is Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, dude. Like I have a friend who lives in Chattanooga that still works for a San Francisco company because he's allowed to work from home.
That's a brave new world.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a fundamental shift in the way that businesses operate, and not just retail businesses, but all businesses. This is a life-changing event, and it's world-changing. And I don't know. I just want my cupping room back, really. I just want all of the boxes out of my cupping room. But if my business stays 35% online, then I won't be doing that.
Right, right. I mean, even as things change, I think one of the things that we've seen through just conversations that I've had with coffee people and what we see happening through programs like yours and others around the world is that there's that same value of hospitality. There's the same connection that we long for, that we're trying to achieve. And that's the same, even though the context is different, and even though the means to that end is different. It's nice to know that that part of quote unquote normal is still there.
Yeah, exactly. I think people really like coffee is that routine, and I'm trying to do the homeschool preschool thing right now, and everything I'm reading is it's all about routine, and it's all about keeping the routine, and that's how you're going to keep everything in place, and coffee is part of that routine. I think I'm not alone in a lot of the parents I'm talking to. It's like there's coffee time and then there's wine time. That is the only difference in our days right now. It's like we're at home all day long, but the first half of the day is coffee.
WINE, not WH,
yeah.
right?
No. There's plenty of whining in my house too. Don't. Yeah. I want to go to the park. Mommy, when is the coronavirus?
I know that life too much.
Dude, he keeps asking. He's like, when the coronavirus is over, can I go to my friend's house? And I was like, yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
So one last question for you, Lauren, and I'm really excited to have gotten the chance to chat with you here. What would your advice be to other owners out there as we are, a month into this, solid month into this, really, for everyone? Yeah. What kind of advice would you give them? What kind of encouragement would you offer?
I think not giving up is the first and most important thing, because I think America needs small businesses, and your community needs you, and your team needs you. And I think I think it's easy, especially if you've already been struggling before all this happens. I think it's easy to just throw in the towel and just be like, well, it's a sign, like I'm done, and I just hope that we can get through this together and still have our vibrant small business economy at the end of all this. And I'm hoping that, the federal government and the state and local governments, continue to step up and make sure that we all get through this together. I think that there's been a lot of frustration with a lot of the programs that are available for small businesses, and just kind of like, I think speak up and fight. And if we all keep fighting and we all keep lobbying for ourselves, because all those big corporations, the airline industries, they all have lobbyists in Capitol Hill, and they're all getting exactly what they want. And we're small businesses, it's like we have, 65 employees. I don't have the money or time to pay a lobbyist to go lobby for me. And I think we need to make sure that all of our small businesses are being loud, and that our customers are fighting for us too. And it's okay to do, big call outs on your social media to be like, hey, Wells Fargo is screwing me over. One of our friends posted on his company Instagram this morning that Wells Fargo denied them a loan. And this is the sort of thing, like, now is not the time to be quiet, and now is not the time to just kind of hope that everything's going to be okay. Like, everything's going to be okay because we're going to make it okay. And that's what I'm reminding my managers. That's what I'm reminding my friends who are also business owners. It's like, this is the time to fight, and we're only going to get what we get because we fought for it. No one's going to do it for us. So I think that's my advice.
And that's great advice. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate you sharing all that you've shared and for the example that you're giving us with what you're doing in the business. Really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the show. I appreciate your insights here. Super helpful to hear what's going on at Andytown. I hope you all found that to be really insightful, and it gave you some encouragement and motivation yourself as leaders and owners in specialty coffee right now. One of the main things that we take away from Lauren, both in her Founder Friday episode and in this episode, is her absolute dedication to her team, making sure that everyone is as safe and cared for as possible. And that spirit of generosity with which she leads is obviously at the root of what she and her team are doing for healthcare heroes in their community. So thank you again for tuning in. More interviews to come on this COVID-19 focused series, From Keys to the Shop.